All right, guys, we're back with Chatham Love, who's the CEO of Gila Concealed, right?
Yep, that's correct. Gila
Gila
Conceal.
Concealed. He's also a veteran, and we're going to get to talk to him today. He's got some really cool camouflage, and he's into some engineering. I really wanted to pick his brain today. So, man, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Got a snow day right now. This is the first day it snowed in Arizona this whole year, which is a little unusual. So
Nice. Yeah, we got the cold temps here, and they're saying we're going to have some kind of snowstorm coming through starting
okay,
tomorrow. So
yeah,
I guess we'll see how Oklahoma's weird. You know, today it's going
oh
to
yeah,
snow and be a blizzard, and tomorrow it's 65 degrees. You just don't
oh
know.
yeah, yeah. I usually hate the cold, but it's been so long since you have a snow day, so it's fine. I'm fine with
Yeah.
it this time.
So you were in the military. What branch were you in, and how long did you serve?
I was in the Marines, and I served for 5 years.
Okay, and what'd
Five
you
years.
do?
I was a CH-53 Echo crew chief. So basically, a helicopter air crewman, in-flight mechanic. I operated the weapon systems, helped the pilots with everything that they couldn't do, loaded cargo, stuff like that. Because the 53 is an enormous aircraft, and the pilots have enough things going on that they need to be taken care of. That there'd be anywhere between one and three of us in the back, enlisted crew members that were helping out. When you first start out, you're more just looking out the windows, doing looking out for terrain, looking out for other aircraft, loading cargo, pre-flighting the aircraft, that kind of stuff. But as you get more experience, there's a whole lot of other stuff, a whole lot of other responsibilities that you become pretty keen on. Listening to radio comms for anything that they might have missed, watching the maps, making sure that we are where we're supposed to be on timeline, especially if we're doing a mission, like keeping track of those individual items, and then yeah, that was the gist of my job, at least at the base level. And then when I wasn't flying, I was a mechanic.
Okay, so you did 5 years. You got out. Let's talk about your transition a little bit. What was transition life like for you?
It's a loaded question because it's had so many ups and downs. Initially, it was a little weird, but I was extremely motivated. I had accomplished a lot by the end of my enlistment, and I really liked doing what I did. I liked being a Marine, but I was so burnt out. I was so complacent by the end of it. Just day in, day out, and not really. It's a service, you're not expecting much back, but like I
Yeah.
wanted to do a second enlistment maybe, and then I got to thinking, okay, if I'm doing a second enlistment, then I'm going to be looking out for myself a little bit here. Like let me see what I can do because I'm not super happy where I'm at right now. And I couldn't get the job I wanted to do, like a lat move, and I couldn't get the billet I wanted, and they still wouldn't give me a housing allowance, and I was a sergeant, so I still am living in the barracks, So I was like, all right, I got to make a choice here, and I just decided to get out and do something that would challenge me still. The problem was I had a 1.7 GPA in high school. I
Mm.
didn't. I wasn't stupid or anything. I just really wanted to join the Marines, and I thought that's what I was always going to do. But then I got an idea. I was like, I want to be an engineer. Like I worked on these aircraft for so long. I feel like I could design aircraft. Like
Hmm.
you ever been working on something and you're like
Oh
removing a
yeah.
bolt, and then
This is
you're
the
like,
dumbest
crap.
design. I could have designed it so much better.
Yeah, I gotta remove a whole other part to take this bolt out. What the hell?
Yes.
So I was like, I can do that. And I had to go to community college for like 2 years to get a good GPA, get a 4.0, and get all my math done because I didn't know what a negative times a negative was, and I wanted to do engineering. So I had to start from square one, and then got accepted to Embry-Riddle out here. But I was just go 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 constantly. Just I had a job, I had a mission. I had like an idea in mind about what I wanted to do, and I wasn't thinking about how much my life had just changed at all. It was constant distraction
Yeah.
all the time. And so it was starting to manifest itself. And my girlfriend would see it all the time. My girlfriend's been with me for a long time since my second deployment. And she was noticing it, but I wasn't. And so eventually it got to a point that was so bad, just random bursts of like anxiety or depression. There was a time where it got so bad that I think it was 2 or 3 weeks straight. I would not be able to fall asleep because I was so anxious, just up pacing, moving things around the apartment, like picking it up and then going and putting it somewhere else and then putting it back where it was later.
Yeah.
Just like feeling like something needed to be doing. And then I couldn't go fall asleep. And then by the time I finally exhausted, passed out like 4 in the morning, then I'd wake up again at like 7 a.m. Immediately back in anxiety, like instantly sometimes even an instant panic attack as soon as I woke up. And it was like 2 straight weeks of that, and I was like, I can't live like this, dude. Like, this is not okay. So she drove me to the VA. Actually, she was like, get in the car, like we're done with this. And I started doing stuff at the VA, which helped a little bit. But really, I started getting into like mindfulness and meditation, and just making peace with some of the weird things that I have going on, and learning to manage them as opposed to like getting pissed off or pushing it to the side. It's just something you got to be constantly vigilant of. But yeah, transition was weird. You go from having a mission, having external sources of discipline all the time. You like to think you're self-made when you're in the military, but you really do have people counting on you and breathing down your neck for stuff, and you'll get in
Yep.
trouble if you don't do it.
Yep.
As soon as you're out, all that goes away. All your best friends that you have been through so much with gone for the most part. I'm very fortunate. I still have a few of them pretty close, but it's not quite the same. And
Yeah.
then also being a college student didn't help either, because I'm just surrounded by like 18-year-old geniuses doing engineering, and I have so little in common with them. You get no what's it called? Quick like responsiveness to your efforts. There's a word for that, but I can't. It's escaping me right now. But like in the military, you do your due diligence to get your qualifications and stuff.
Hmm.
And within a few months, you get pats on the back, you get a new billet, and they're like, "Thank you, good job, like good job getting your quals, keep pushing that kind of stuff." But you finish a semester of college, nobody
Yeah.
gives a shit, dude. Who
You just go to
cares?
the
Like,
next one. Yeah.
yeah, on to the
Yeah.
next one.
Yeah.
And then it's like it's gonna be my going on my 6th year being like doing higher education, because I had to start from square one. So that long doing with no sort of payback for all those efforts gets to be quite a drag. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been really really difficult. Being a college student has been way more difficult than the Marines ever was for me. So
No, we've talked about it before. In my place of work and with some other veterans that I've chatted with about, you know, the military is not always really good about telling you good job, but they will at least acknowledge you did a job.
yeah,
And sometimes that is all that matters is that, okay,
right,
you acknowledge that I existed and I did it and you want me to do something else? Okay, let's move forward and let's go do it.
yeah,
But in the real world, like you go out to a real business, a corporation, like some of them just don't care. You go to
yeah,
college and you're supposed to pass your classes, so they just, hey, you need to sign up for next semester. And they're a business, so they want your money, and it's a very different thing. And as
right,
veterans, we're not used to when you transition. They don't tell you all these little nuances that are going to change, and
right,
those things I think are the things that probably hit home the most that you have
totally,
to adjust to because you're like, oh, I have to do that now, or oh, I have to get used to someone like not really expecting that of me, or the
yeah,
people around me don't have the same mentality. It's like getting adjusted to all those things is different. Like a lot of people think, well, you don't have to wear a uniform every day. You're not in combat
mhm,
boots. You don't have to say yes or no, ma'am. All this stuff, blah blah
yeah,
blah. No, that's not the nuances that really
yeah,
get to you. You can get over that kind of stuff.
hmm
It's the little things that, and it messed with me too. I had anxiety too for years and didn't realize it until I went and got help from the VA. And he was like, "Yeah, you don't realize those little nuances. That's what's killing you right now is that you just can't accept some of these things." And it was like, man, it made so much
yeah.
sense. And after that, the world changed for me.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things that it always feels like, rather than like you defeat an enemy, it feels like having your boot on the neck of a snake at all times. Like, you got to be thinking about it. You got to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you lapse in it, you can easily go back into that state, like or worse. Or it's something you got to put constant effort into, just like a lot of things in life. Like, if you're just not going to be able to beat it overnight. It's just a part of you, and you got to always be disciplined with it. And it sucks, dude. Like, yeah, those nuances that you're talking about, that's interesting, because I did get a first internship. It was a co-op with Collins Aerospace. And so I was working on aircraft components up there, and but it was like 6 month long thing. And so eventually I started to get a little bit uncanny. I'd never been in a corporate environment like that. So like, they
Hmm.
will give you pats on the back and like thanks for accomplishing this and some recognition, but for some reason it can feel uncanny sometimes. And I loved Collins. There was nothing wrong with that company at all. But I think just that transition from the military to that, it's hard to make sense of for a little bit until you start to get it and understand what's going on.
What would be maybe your biggest tip to someone who's about to leave the Marine Corps and pursue school or something else? What would be your biggest tip to them?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if that it's not a one size fits all thing at all. Sometimes it goes smoother than others, but I think just number one, be humble. Like, get out and understand that you did a lot of stuff, and that's going to help you, depending on how much you got out of the military or got out of your experience. That's going to help you, but let it help you from the sidelines. Let it help you from behind you, and just like subconsciously or whatever. Don't be just throwing it out there that you've done all this stuff because it's for you. You've had a special experience. You don't have to be sharing it all the time. And it'll take a little bit maybe for you to not bring those types of things up. As soon as possible, go to if you can go to therapy
Mm,
immediately. And I don't care if you think you have symptoms or not. Just as soon as possible, go and start talking about it. Because if you don't talk about it to somebody, then you're not going to talk about it to anybody. That's is basically how it's going to go.
it's
Um,
good.
that's just how we are. Like you might think like, oh, it's not a problem now, but if I need to talk, I will. The only time we're going to start talking about it is when it's a really serious problem. So,
Exactly. Like you don't know it's a problem unless somebody tells you, and then you have to be in a space to admit it.
yeah,
And that's a really good point. Is go start talking to someone because these experts, and the expert is the one who helped me realize so much. And I was like, man, I just didn't realize all these things that are going on. It
yeah,
was way more my fault than it was
hmm
anybody else. The situation that I was in with my family,
sure,
and
yeah,
it dawned on me. I was like, man, I'm so at fault for this, but it's simply because I don't understand myself, and
yeah,
that changed the game for me. And I agree
hmm
with you. You think, oh, I don't have a problem right now. I'm transitioning just fine. Well,
yeah,
then you're not sleeping at night, and then maybe you're eating bad, and you're not working out, and then
hmm
your whole life changes so much, and you don't think it's a big deal, but the
yeah.
people around you do. But they're not. How often are they going to say something?
Very seldom. Yeah, unless it's really deeply personal for them or something, or they
Right.
have a high level of confidence and have been in that situation before,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, which you can't rely on. You can't rely on just like running into somebody with
Sure.
experience and a high level of confidence to share it. So, um, yeah, get started on that, and then don't get stuck. I guess this was a little bit more niche, but like there's certain guys that I see at the Veteran Center at my school or whatever. They could be studying the same degree as me, and they just go to the Veteran Center and hang out with all the other veterans, and that's what they do. And then they go home, whatever. They come back, go to the Veteran Center, get their studies done. Like, dude, go and talk to people. Go and talk to kids that like are nothing like you, especially these kids that are doing really well in it. They've been doing it they've been kind of born to do it. You might be 26 or 28 or whatever, and they might be 18, but just like start doing that, especially sooner than later, because it'll make you more well rounded. You're going to learn, to be honest, you're going to learn more from people that aren't like you than the other veterans. I'm not saying don't hang out. I love vets. I love hanging out with my veteran buddies, but I
Sure.
make it a point to go and hang out with these kids that aren't like me. That you know, just they're geniuses and they're so good at this, and it's such a confidence boost actually, because you'll go
Exactly.
and be like I'm a little like nervous because I'm like, dude, these kids are so smart, and like I feel like I'm not on this level yet. And you go and talk to them, and like, sure, in one regard, but then when we're going to actually build a rocket engine, like all of a sudden it comes to light that these kids that have been doing all the differential equations for it and figuring all that stuff out don't know how a wrench and socket work, and they literally can't assemble it. I'm like, there's no way you've never touched a wrench, dude. Like
Yeah.
you're an engineer or whatever.
You have something
Um,
to offer them.
yeah, it's like okay, cool, and then like leadership and stuff. Sometimes they won't know how to like run a team or whatever, and you'll just be surprised how much you can kind of bring to the table. So it's both like helping you grow in the places that you're bad at, and then reminding you these places that you've built a lot of skills in already. So it
It's a
can be
good
a huge
point.
confidence boost. Yeah,
It's a real good point because, and I love hanging out with veterans too, but you know what? You have so much in common and you embrace the suck. And then it's
hmm
really easy for you guys to start talking shit about your service and
yeah,
stuff like that and complaining. And the next thing you
yeah,
know, it's kind of bumming you out and it's not exactly helping you
sure, yeah,
transition, and I'm not dogging other veterans or anything like that because I've been one of those people too.
yeah,
But to your point, don't necessarily pigeonhole yourself into just one
yeah,
group of people. Like go
mhm,
make some new friends, new acquaintances who don't have that military connection to you, and then offer
yeah,
something to them, and they'll offer something back. There's a
yeah,
value to that I think people don't. estimate like they should. They probably
Yeah.
underestimate it, and it can be a powerful thing.
Yeah, and you don't want to have any like transactional relationships with people, so you don't want to turn it into like I'm going to give them this and they're going to give me that. It
Yeah.
should you should genuinely just want to be making friends with people and stuff, but it goes. It's definitely true that you do get a little bit out of that too, and so do they. So um, those are my main three. I guess there's not a lot of like good ones that I give to everybody, but um,
Those are good
yeah,
though.
I guess those were the ones that I struggled with for a while, and I realized like once you do those things, it helps massively. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can sense the change. So
So let's talk about school. You're going to school for like mechanical engineering and rocket propulsion.
yeah, so I wanted to work at SpaceX really bad. I
Mm,
just saw that they were like launching stuff to space and then using reusing the rockets, and I've always been obsessed with space. Like I think the only class I got an A in all through high school was an astronomy course, I believe. Yeah,
okay.
and that was the only course ever. I got an A in it, and it just kind of came back full circle, and I started wanting to do aerospace engineering because honestly, I didn't know anything about the different engineering fields. So I thought, you want to work on rockets, aerospace. That should be what I'm doing. And then I did that degree here for like 2 years before I started to understand that like it doesn't quite work that way. Like
Yeah.
aerospace will just allow you to kind of focus in either the structures of airfoils and things that fly, or space systems. So that could be anything from like the way a rover's robotics move to the way that satellites communicate with each other with relays and stuff. And I started realizing like, dude, I miss like the guts and the fire and like the plumbing and shit from the Marines because I worked on engine. That's what when I was a mechanic there. I worked on the engines and the transmissions and stuff.
Okay.
And I was like, dude, I want to blow something up. Let's go. So I figured out that we have a propulsion track in our school. It's mechanical engineering with a focus in propulsion. And when you do propulsion, you can kind of pick and choose what types of engines you're working on. But it's essentially jet, aircraft, or rockets. And a lot of kids go here and they'll just focus on rockets, just rocket engines. A few will just go air breathing stuff, but I've been mixing them up because I like them both. I think they're both interesting. So I've done some classes on jet turbines and thermal power systems and stuff. And I've also done other ones that are specifically rocket propulsion.
How close do you think Elon is to actually launching someone like into space, like more than like a handful of people? Like he's got this huge system where he's hoping to launch dozens
Yeah.
of people into space. How close do you think he really is?
Realistically, it's hard to say because SpaceX has an odd metric for their progress. It's very unusual, and that's why it's taken the whole industry kind of by storm. Because forever, big space has done things very slow, slow, getting all the calculations right, thinking everything through, and before you even get close to testing something, you basically got an entirely finished design that is foolproof and it's very bureaucratic too a lot of the times, and, political even. Um, and so that process is extremely tedious and slow. And SpaceX has just been okay. Well, let's get a design as fast as possible, like that we know is probably going to work and going to have all of the base features we're testing, and let's launch it. And then we're going to cover the thing in sensors and just see what happens. And then they'll launch it, and it'll just explode, and they'll just do it again. And it's extremely impressive how quickly they can actually, like within 3 iterations, go from something detonating
Yeah.
instantly to something that is flying in space, which is pretty remarkable. But I think what you're referring to is his Starship program mostly,
Hmm.
and that one's a beast, dude. That one's hard to say for sure because they're doing that same methodology, but for something that is larger than any rocket that's ever been built and
Yeah.
has
It's
dozens
massive.
dozens of engines on it,
Yeah.
like dozens of
Massive.
complex, never before fired types of engines on it. There's so many things that can go wrong, and there's so many things yet to put on it. Right now, it's just skin and tanks and engines. Like that's supposed to carry people, so it's got to have a life support system and a
Oh
capsule
yeah.
within it and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Seats the whole nine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually tough. It's hard to say, but I do think it's going to happen pretty soon. Like um, that yeah it if you just follow the trend line, it's not hard to extrapolate that this thing will happen at some point, but I think they're going to continue to keep running into issues and red tape and politics, particularly because at this point they're no longer a startup. Like they are big space
Yeah.
at this
Oh
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's
So
effectively replaced NASA and
yeah,
accomplished
well,
more. You know, at least publicly. I'll say that. At least
yeah,
publicly, it looks like he's accomplished more than NASA ever has. I mean, I remember it was just years ago when I was watching him. They launched that capsule up into space that docked with the ISS.
yeah,
And that was like
yeah,
the first time in history that like a corporate company was going to do
yeah,
something like that. And
yeah,
it was so interesting over the couple of days after the launch, watching the progress. And then I watched like the live feed of when they docked and of course the media coverage was insane. They had all the experts on there talking about this is what they're doing now and then the air compression and decompression and all this stuff.
yeah,
It was so fascinating. But to think somebody made all this progress, and then when he launched that rocket, and he said, "I'm going to launch it, and then it's going to come back down to Earth." And just the
hmm
fact that it came back down to Earth, I think it exploded the first time, but
yeah,
the fact that it came back down to Earth and actually slowed down like it was going to land
yeah, yeah.
was
It's pretty
making
wild.
history. Nobody's
Yeah,
ever done that before. And then when he successfully did it and it actually landed, like the progress, like you've said, the progress that he's had and the company has had so quickly, it really makes you go, wow, like
hmm
how they are doing something so incredible. This is like
yeah,
Hollywood movie making kind of stuff that they're actually doing. It's really, really cool.
yeah. I get caught between these two parts of my brain because I saw that one you're talking about, especially like the one where they first had astronauts on it.
Hmm.
They launch them up. The booster itself lands itself and is recovered, and then they dock there. And it said like there was a speaker announcement for the astronauts that was like, "Thank you for flying with SpaceX." And I had an existential moment there. I was like, "That's really weird. I've never even thought of that in space." You know, like space is always a government thing, a NASA thing. If you're
Yeah.
getting a message like "Thank you for flying with SpaceX," that's a different realm of space travel. You know what I mean? And there's two parts of my brain. One of them's like, "That's so cool," and the other one's like, "We're getting really close to a cyber dystopia here, boys." Like,
Yeah. Well,
so
and the just the spacesuits that they wore were different.
yeah,
You know, they
yeah,
rolled up to the platform in Teslas. Like
mhm.
it really made you go, what the heck has NASA been doing for all these years?
Yeah. Well, you know, you got to think. SpaceX does do a lot of incredible stuff, but they're doing. Oh, what's the word? I'm gonna piss somebody off when I say this, but they're doing some flashy stuff that's helping us to develop our ability to go and do missions. But
Hmm.
it has always been NASA that's doing those missions. Like it's NASA that is putting together the teams that are like, why would we want to go to Mars? Well, you know, NASA has a team of people that are experts and been studying Mars for years, and they're like, there was water there. We know there was water there, like a lot of it, and
Mm.
so we want to go. And we know how we're going to look, and eventually, like we could find out that this was not the only planet that ever had life on it, which would be insane, like an insane discovery.
Yeah, that
Uh,
confirmation would be crazy.
yeah, that'd be a wild day. But you know, it's NASA that's always been driving these things, like that. You know, NASA. Oh well, of course, you know ESA and other people. But I think what I mean when I say NASA is these research teams, these teams of scientists or experts in their field or whatever it is that are driving some of these missions. And when it comes to SpaceX, they are facilitating that. Like that's how they make their money. Isn't going and exploring Mars for no reason or whatever. It's like providing a launch vehicle capable of sending something NASA wants to Mars to
Mm.
Mars. And so you know, it's a good question. What has NASA been doing? I mean, that is their focus. They're doing the missions. They're doing all the research and like figuring out why we want to be in space to begin with. But they also are subject to so much political and bureaucratic red tape and just their old style of doing things. It is filled with a bunch of
Yeah.
old dudes that are stuck in their ways that won't ever try to do something a little bit differently. So
And maybe
it's a
not so public as
yeah,
SpaceX and Elon Musk, that's probably a huge thing too. NASA doesn't have the PR. They're not necessarily a business, so the the publicity, I guess, could be a little different. That makes a lot of sense too. So
100%.
I guess I could see that, and they're doing some remarkable stuff. I think it's cool that you're getting into
Yeah,
it. Let's talk a little bit about this company you have because I ran across you on Instagram because I saw this on like my For You page or whatever it is, and
sweet.
I looked at this camouflage and I was like, there's no way this is real. I went to your page and I'm scrolling through it. And I'm like, this
Hell
stuff
yeah.
is amazing. It
Thanks,
is
bro.
And I ordered a hoodie, and I can't wait for
Yeah,
it to get here. And I'm going to do a bunch of videos and
yeah,
pictures and stuff on it because it's just
yeah,
almost like a field test because it's blowing my mind, the
yeah,
pictures
absolutely.
in the
I can't wait to hear
video.
what you have to say about it. But
It looks invisible, and I'm going to throw some pictures up here in post production for people to kind of see as we're talking about this. But how did you get into the camouflage game?
uh, for that, we got to go way back. Actually, it's interesting. A lot of things have kind of come full circle in my life, like starting from the, like in the astronomy course, and then ending up doing engineering for it. But another thing was when I was a kid, I was super artistic. I would draw all the time. I would paint graffiti and do, I was a bit of a hooligan, but I was also very artistic. Um, and one of the things that I would do, because I was, my dad had a farm in Valdosta, which is like 20 minutes from the Florida Georgia border,
Hmm.
big farm. And I used to go out there and just hike around and fish and hunt around for stuff. And I got like a little bit obsessed with camo for a little bit, just like the idea of like trying to hide from an animal and like some are better than others and like why that is. I thought that was really interesting. The idea that you could just like draw different shapes, and if you draw them in such a way, it makes you harder to see. Like that was really cool to me. Um, so I would like draw some stuff in like my notepad, literally drawing camouflage patterns when I was like 12. And then I actually got caught once by a teacher doing that in class, and she called me out, and I got super embarrassed about it, and so I don't think I ever touched it again. Um, then when I was going through my transition out of the service and trying to figure out ways to relax and stop being so anxious all the time, I was like, dude, I need to reconnect with that artistic stuff I used to do because I was like pretty talented and I never touched it again. I just like left it off one day when I was like 18 and never picked it back up. So like trying different art, drawing different stuff, and then I had also just recently built a rifle, an AR-15. I milled it out and built the whole thing, and I was like, I want to make this thing look different. So what if I get some spray paint? I used to do graffiti, so I was like, what if I could do like a camo paint job on this thing, make it really rad? There's lizards and reptiles all over the place here, and I'd always in Arizona where I live now. And I'd always notice how well some of them could blend. And like even if you're like fishing and you're at a lower elevation near the water and you walk up to a higher cliff, you can see the patterns changing. Like the lizards have different patterns and live in those areas explicitly for that. And so I was like, let's do this reptilian. Let's like make it really crazy with reptile stripes and stuff. And I just like winged it and put something together and did something that was like had some reds in it and some unusual colors that you don't usually see in any camo patterns, and it worked really well. Like I was super stoked about how it came out, and I could just put it down on the ground and walk away from it and not be able to find it. And so I posted it online to a subreddit, um, just to show it off or whatever, and I got like dozens or hundreds of comments on it.
Mm.
And quite a few of them were like, "What pattern is that? Like, you got to tell me what that is. Is that like a clothing brand or something? Because I want to go find out what that is and maybe buy it." And I was like, "Well, that doesn't exist. Like, I just made that,
Yeah.
which was kind of a cool
Sorry.
feeling." Yeah, I was like, "Sorry." Um, but I told my girlfriend about this, and she was like, "Dude, you should do a company." And I was like, "That's a lot right now because I'm full time student. I'm
Oh yeah.
doing
A
sometimes
lot of work.
70 hours a week at school." And working a part time job. I was like, that's a lot. I don't know. And I was very low confidence at the time. I was still in the middle of depression and anxiety and stuff. But I went ahead and did it and just started playing around and with Photoshop. Not fully like a company yet, but started up an Instagram page. And initially, I don't know if you followed long enough, but initially I didn't call it a business. It was a project. It was just like Gila Conceal project.
Mm.
And it was just trying to make cool patterns. But I
Yeah.
couldn't do that for long because I was getting comments immediately and messages from people immediately, like, "Dude, when are you gonna put out T-shirts and stuff?" I was like, "Well, all right, if we're gonna, we might as well shit or get off the pot here." So
Yeah.
I I just bought a domain name and all that stuff and got rolling with it. And it became kind of this like perfect therapy device for me, to be honest, because what it was I could go out to the desert and use my engineering stuff that I had already been learning, but I was starting to get kind of distraught about like,
Yeah.
what am I still doing this? Like, or do I still want to be doing this? Take all this stuff that I'd been learning in the degree, literally create an engineering diagram and pipeline for me to do my designs and test them and stuff. Go out to the desert, take a bunch of pictures of lizards, bring a bunch of 805s, drink some beers, camp out there with some buddies, go home, look at what reptile species there were, study for like commonalities in the patterns, commonalities in the colors, and then even like I was even reading like biology books and some research on the biology of them because it would just get so tricky like to actually study them. And I own reptiles. Like I have a 2 foot long monitor lizard that lives in in a
Wow.
enclosure in my apartment. Yeah, I've got a snake. So I've always like kind of been aware of thinking reptiles are pretty cool. And yeah, just it would get so intricate where I'm like, holy shit, there's these stripes on the arms and legs of almost every lizard out here, right? They've got these high contrast black and white stripes on the arms and legs. Everything else is camo. Well, what like is there something to that? Could I be putting that in my camo? And I'd call my buddy up from the school and be like, hey, I need you to help me do like a designed experiment, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it yet, so I need your help kind of figuring out and doing the testing. And we'd go out and take a bunch of pictures with and without contrast stripes on, and like moving and like thousands of pictures, and then do an analysis on it. And we figured out that those stripes weren't making them more hidden. It was drawing attention to their arms and legs. And we were like, why would that be the case? Well, because, you know, if a lizard is seen by a predator like a bird, in those last few minutes after it's already been spotted, the bird's going to go for an arm or a leg as opposed to something that's going to kill it. Um, so it was more of a defense thing. And
Okay.
it just became, it became this like cool process where I got to go out and be nerdy as hell and do art. And people really liked it. And the camo patterns just ended up being like extraordinarily effective, and I was like super surprised. But basically, you know, those toss tests that you've seen where I'll just take a shirt and throw it on the ground. That's just because that's like it's a cool gimmick, but it was actually because I would go out and do that places and get frustrated if it didn't work. I wanted it to just like disappear, and if it
Mm-hmm.
didn't do that, it kind of like irked me, and I would just go back and start from square one and figure out how to get it to actually do that. Um,
Well, like the
so yeah,
first
I
time
mean,
I saw you do it on Instagram, you tossed the shirt onto the ground and then you walked away. And as you walked away, it just blended into the ground that it was laying on. I was like, "There's no way that's real." Like it
yeah,
looked so invisible that I was like, "There's no way." And I just kept looking and looking and looking, and I was like, "This pattern is amazing." The fact that
yeah.
it does that so well, like I can't wait to get it in my hands. Now you have
Me
two
too.
patterns, right?
I've got three.
Three.
Yeah, so it's Yuma, Prescott, and Flagstaff. And these are all just named after regions in Arizona where they're designed to perform best. The whole thing's kind of Arizona inspired. That's where the Gila comes from. One, Gila monsters, which are native to out here. Then, like, you know, Gila Bend, and there's a lot of different areas and
Mm-hmm.
regions out here with the Gila in the name. Um, so Yuma is the desert one. That is just for the desert. And that's been the trickiest one to get right. I'm so shocked. I was like, desert, I got this in the bag because the seasons don't change the vegetation too much.
Yeah.
You know, you got a decent amount of consistency in what things look like. But it's become such a bigger beast than that. And Yuma, I like where it's at now, but it's one of those patterns that like I'm going to go back to and keep working on because there's some stuff that's really strange. Like if you lay down on the ground, you want these like circles that would look like rocks, but as soon as you stand straight up and someone's looking at you from a distance, you don't get these circles from the rocks anymore. You get like horizontal stripes because all the terrain behind you is like
Yeah.
undulating like that. So it's hard to find a compromise. Anyways, yeah. So Yuma's the arid one. Prescott is semi-arid, and that's the first one that I made, and that was reigning king for a long time. That one is nasty out here. If you like anywhere it's semi-arid, so I've seen it and sent it out to hunters to test here in Oregon, even in the PNW in the Pacific Northwest, Texas, New Mexico, anywhere that you're in kind of a higher highlands that has a little bit less vegetation, but you're still getting like sage-colored brush,
Yeah.
some darker browns, maybe even some like reds from clay or anything like that. You got any of that, the thing just disappears out there. It's like a super chaotic pattern. So that super dry brush, it just disappears in. And then the latest one is Flagstaff, and that's temperate. So that's supposed to be a woodland camouflage. And that one's the one I'm most proud of because that's where I really dialed in what I was doing.
Mm.
I was mixing not just like the pictures of reptiles, but computational tools too that I was learning kind of in school as well. So I could plug images into a software that I helped kind of put together in Python that would read the images for different contrasts and identify the contrast areas for you, and then also like if you feed it a bunch of pictures, it'll tell you in a roundabout way what the common shapes are. Like what are the
Oh,
most common sort of shapes that you see around there. And you can only do so much with that, but
but still, you're
it's a
taking
great starting point.
process of elimination
Yeah.
and you're literally comparing things. A lot of times people go out there, I used to wear a lot of Realtree, and Realtree is good for being in the woods and being in a tree stand. But like if you look at that pattern, it is all one design. It is
Yeah.
what a tree either in the fall or in the spring is supposed to look like. It either has more green or less green in it.
Yeah.
Still good stuff. It works just fine. But where does the breakup become? I think
Yeah.
that's the interesting thing in camouflage is especially in, I would say, more of the West, where there's a lot more spot and stalk hunting as opposed to sitting in tree stands. Like we said, we do a lot of sitting in tree stands and ground blinds here.
Right.
Um, Whereas, elk hunting and mule deer hunting, and even pronghorn hunting is a lot of spot and stalk. It's a lot of
Yeah.
movement. So you constantly need to blend in as you're making your movements. And of course, you have a place like Arizona, which is desert and has really good elk hunting there towards the north.
Hmm.
A lot of different environments. So, well, what did the
Yeah.
feedback from Texas look like? Because that's what's got most interested.
He got two patterns. He got Yuma and he got Prescott, and Prescott way outperformed it. He was really happy with Prescott pattern. And I can't remember. I can send it to you later, but I can't remember exactly which region he was in, but it was in the Highlands somewhere. And he sent me one picture, and I was like, "Oh yeah, dude, you get Prescott for sure." Because it's got a lot of sage in it, but even if you got
Yeah.
that sand around it, with distance, that sage really just kind of blends in there. And especially if you're hunting ungulates, it doesn't matter anyway. They're going to register both of those as fading together. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that one worked really well out there. But you do bring up a good point of stalking versus sitting and ambushing. Uh, in nature, you see both those things too, and you can see them in reptiles. And depending on which one of them an animal does, it will actually change its camo patterns. And I think that hunters should be mindful of that too. Like, there's nothing wrong with going out. If you put Realtree on and you go out and do a bow hunt and stalk, you're gonna be fine. Like
Yeah.
you're still gonna probably be able. Your hunting skills are gonna matter a lot more. And you can extend that as far as you want to. Like, some people are like, well, my granddaddy goes out in a flannel and blue jeans. I'm like, that's badass, man. That's super cool.
Yeah.
But if you want to rely 100% on your hunting skills, go and do that. That makes you a badass. But if you want a little bit of a competitive edge, then do a little thinking about what kind of camo you're wearing. It can't hurt. You know what I mean? It can in some cases be extremely effective. So there's in nature there's these two camo patterns: mimicry and crypsis. Mimicry is the Realtree. That it's just an animal that wants to look like a leaf or whatever, and they're mostly going to be sitting still, either sitting still or mimicking the movement of bushes. Like swaying back and forth or something like that. But if the animal's moving and stalking actively, then they're going to use crypsis, which instead of wanting to look like a log, you want a predator or a prey item to interpret your body as a series of unrelated shapes. Not necessarily they see you and they go, "Oh, that's a log." They see you and they go, I don't know what that is." Like, there might be some. It's like you're getting like close up shapes and far away shapes, so it's not enough for that animal to register that is even a being.
Yeah.
And those are really important for hunters to allow you those last second movements, because if you get, like, if you're drawing a bow or something like this and you have to make that movement, it's not normal if an animal sees a branch do this.
Yeah. No.
A branch doing this, an
Uh-huh.
animal knows that's weird. But if the animal's already a little bit confused trying to figure out what you are, then you do get a little bit of extra time while it's computing basically what it's even looking at the time.
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point because especially sitting in a tree stand, unless they're looking up or in your general direction, you tend to have that time to draw
Yeah.
back or to make a movement quietly.
Right.
But if you're spot and stock where you're more at eye level, yeah, that unfamiliar movement of pulling a bow back is
Hmm.
definitely going to look weird no matter what you have on.
Exactly.
So I think that's a good point. Now, what has been maybe your biggest challenge to starting up kind of like a clothing brand? Because a lot of people can start up a clothing brand. There's these print demand services and things that are offered now, but they do
Right.
basic white, black, blue, red
Hmm.
T-shirts, and then you print a design on it, and it's print on
Right.
demand. You're
Right.
trying to do the whole shirt.
Yeah.
is print on demand. What's that been like?
So that's been a huge challenge, honestly. That's been the biggest challenge is I can and I have found many businesses that are able to print on like all over fabric like that and do my patterns. And initially it was a godsend because I was like, how the hell am I gonna like just make quick prototypes of stuff and go in? And I didn't. I was like really nervous about that. But really quickly, I was able to find companies that could do that, and initially that was what was carrying my business because even if it was just like a hoodie, like you got, or like a t-shirt, a long sleeve t-shirt, people wanted to get it. They wanted to like check out the camo and see what it's about. So you would be surprised there are good services for that, and I still use them for a couple of things that on my site. But I'm now going local. I'm finding local manufacturers that can do that. One of the reasons being long wait times sometimes. Like it's a lot cheaper for me to if a company can do that and print immediately onto the shirts instead of having them send it to me and then I send it out to customers. It can be a lot faster to have those different companies. Like one of them specializes in shirts, another one is a veteran-owned business I found that does like hats or whatever. Have them all send it to a carrier, and they just hold items for me and send them out when customers order them.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is great because I can keep doing. I saw you just had the guy, the CEO of Lit Beard Company on here,
Yeah.
and he was talking about his process, one man show, hand doing every single box,
Hmm.
like thousands of orders, 10,000
Yeah.
orders or something like
Anthony's
that. Dude.
crushing it. I don't know how he does it. He wants to do
I don't,
15,000 orders this year, and I'm like, bro.
yeah, yeah,
Dang.
it's that is so insanely impressive. Like, not only are you saying I don't know how he does it, I'm seeing it and going, I don't want to do that. Like, I kind of I kind of don't want to be sitting in a shop like putting stuff together all the time. So I'm trying to find ways to make it a little bit more streamlined, and by getting other companies involved, as opposed to being like I'm going to be the one that makes all the shirts. I'm finding veteran-owned companies that already make shirts like that, and I'm like, can you do it in my pattern? Yep, cool. I'll order. Here's a license to do it in my pattern, and I'm going to order 50 of them from you, and we'll just keep doing that. Which is it's just more fun, to be honest. I get to interact with a lot of cool companies. I get to focus on what I actually enjoy, which is making badass camo as opposed to sewing. You know,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, but it comes with slow wait times and stuff. Like with your hoodie, that's in a carrier right now. That's why it's been taking a little bit longer. It's the holidays, and
Yeah.
they're not just sending it out to. They're not just worried about hunters for Gila Conceal. They've probably got a few other businesses there that they're sending stuff out for. So I'm realizing that that's a kink in it. So I was like, okay, I need to find a solution to this, which I'm still working on. And then the other thing is like nobody, if I'm going to be a camo company or I'm still growing, this is brand new, basically startup that I'm doing. And if I'm going to be competing with the Sitkas and the Kuyus of the world, I've got to be printing on really high quality shit. And so
Yeah.
over the last 2 years, I've been looking for somebody who can do that for reasonable amounts of money, and it's impossible. Like it's really tough to find. Just doing ripstop for the trousers, that would be like actual legitimate ripstop. I got a couple leads. I actually talked to the guy from Relv. I don't know if you know Relv Camo.
I've
Um,
seen them. Yeah.
yeah, RELV, super cool guy, super nice guy, cool camo patterns too. And he's one of the only guys I see doing thermal right now. So he's got a lot of like anti-thermal stuff on there.
Yeah.
So
That's cool stuff. I've seen
yeah,
some of that on Instagram. Been like, wow,
yeah,
that's impressive.
I got no issues plugging that guy because he helped me out a lot when I was first starting. He gave me some tips and stuff. But he gave me a couple leads, and I went and talked to them. And just to put this in perspective, I'm a college student. I think at the time, Gila Conceal had a budget of like $5,000 that I was trying to work with. And I called up this company and I was like, "Hey, can you do my pattern on ripstop, on merino wool, on these different fabrics that you make?" And they were like, "Yeah, we do that all the time." But basically, what's going to happen is we roll our dyes onto the fabric with a giant roller that's custom tailored to your individual pattern. We order dye that is the custom color for your pattern, and I would essentially need to give them money for setting up warehouse space, designing those machineries, and making the orders and doing the design of those dyes, like figuring out which colors would actually match and stuff, and came in their minimum order, to make that even worth it for them. And I think it was like 60 grand starting, and followed by a contract of regular orders from them. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening, dude. So
Might be a bit much to start off. Yeah.
yeah,
For the
that
future,
was,
sure, but I mean, 60
yeah,
grand's that's a house.
yeah. So it's been rough. I can't I can't make that happen. And even if I could, at this second, I would have basically need to quit school to go and make sure that
Yeah.
this thing
Because
happens.
then you
Or
got
I
to
would need to
sell
slow.
what they have you make,
Yeah,
and you got to
I'd
sell it.
slow it down.
Yeah.
I couldn't do 70 hours a week at the school anymore, which is I'm approaching the end of my degree anyway. So well,
So yeah.
I'm
So like, what's the future look like? What's the next evolution in Gila Concealed?
good question. I want to get core zips, trousers, and ripstop made, as well as some windproof jackets. So I need to find companies in the states that can do that at my scale, or at least be willing to help get me in that direction, or something like that. Um, that needs to happen ASAP if I'm going to keep drawing people in and giving hunters the patterns that they deserve, because it can blend in all day, but if you walk through like a bunch of brush with like chala in it and it just rips real easy, like what's the point? So
Yeah.
that has to happen ASAP, which I'm still working on. If anybody's got contacts or leads or something, send it my way. I've investigated tons of them, and I've talked to followers about this, and still figuring it out. I know they exist. I know they're out there. I just got to find the right one. Um, so that would happen first of all. Definitely getting all three patterns finalized into some version that isn't constantly evolving, because I'm in a fortunate position right now because I don't have those operations set up of those huge dye machines and stuff. I can change the pattern, no problem. I can just change it right now and then go and buy new stuff in my stock. And that's allowing me that SpaceX like iteration that's really fast, and I can change the pattern immediately. And that engineering technique that I do lets me do that too. And so I need to, over the next year, I'm capitalizing on that to quickly and effectively get every single pattern to the point where I can't touch it anymore, because it's just too good. It's exactly what I wanted. And then have those as my final three initial patterns, whatever. Then those can go on those ripstops. And then the other thing that I want to do is bring some other people on board potentially. It's one of those things where I could continue to do it myself. I'm fully capable of doing that, but it's more fun, to be honest, if I have somebody else to bounce ideas off of, and maybe somebody that has some skills that I don't, that I'm a little more lacking in, or I just find tedious. There's certain things I find tedious, but I've got to do. Other things that other people would find tedious, but I love doing. So it'd be nice to find some other people to work on the project with. I think it'd be good for it. That's basically what it looks like. As soon as I graduate, if I can make good progress in this, and have somebody else maybe on the system, then I would even consider just doing this full time, and not necessarily working at a SpaceX or a NASA for the time being, to
Yeah.
get the company going and stuff. That is on the table right now.
Well, before I
Because
let you go,
I think
where
that
can people go find more about you and Gila Concealed and follow along to see the progress?
So just if you want to go check out what I have in the patterns, www.gilaconceal.com, GILA conceal.com. On Instagram is where I'm posting most often. So if you want to actually go see like me, what I'm up to, what I'm currently testing, or just like cool pictures that I get back from people testing my patterns, because I'm always sending out free stuff to testers or cheap stuff to testers, and they send me pictures. If you just want to see the evolution of it and just what I post on there, the Instagram handle is just Gila Conceal, just at Gila Conceal. Those are the two primary places. I am considering doing like an email letter or a blog of some type to also document some of the stuff and research that I'm doing, but that's not said and done yet. So those would be the two primary.